Welcome to Season 5, Episode 1 of the Purpose Pro Podcast. Our mission is to connect you to your unique design and purpose. If you love learning simple and effective ways to lead yourself and others well, this podcast is for you. And if you're watching, you'll notice that Zach now has dark hair, a dark beard,
a little more fluff,
a little tanner, and might have gained a few pounds.
Yeah.
He's also going by the name of Aaron Alba, our creative director.
Yeah. What's up, guys? Hello. I am filling in for Zach this season. Zach spent the past 4 seasons learning all the great things about being a leader, so now he's doing all of those things. And so I have the pleasure from being behind the camera to in front of the camera while Zach takes a nap and leads his people at his business really well.
Yes. While he's on podcast sabbatical,
yes,
we have asked you to come in and maybe by some act of God, increase our listener base.
God, I hope so.
You think so?
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Maybe you can put me out of a job is what I'm hoping. And it can just be the Aaron Alba podcast.
I just slowly take over and just step by step.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm down for it. I'm down for it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can do a whole episode where we talk about you because I know you would love that. But we do have a guest that's kind of awkwardly hanging out, waiting to be introduced. So, Lucia, thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a business coach among us, and so Lucia, you and I met not too long ago, and you got involved in Catalyst. And in the process of you becoming a mentor, I got to spend time with you as you generously donated some of your services to our nonprofit organization. And I got to tell you, I've had a lot of mentors and people over the years. I've never actually had a business coach. And it wasn't until talking to you that I even realized there was a difference between a coach or a mentor or a consultant. Those are all kind of blended worlds to me. But you come from a background in leadership. You've been involved in very successful companies that have quadrupled their staffs and impact. You're now running your own coaching business, supporting people to help them really discover, the greatness and the impact that they're born to make, and helping them overcome where they get stuck. And it's comforting to know that CEOs, that leaders, that influencers at any level get stuck, right? And there's always something there, whether it's fear or whatever, that trips us up and prevents us from getting to the next level. And so we're gonna talk about a lot of that on this episode, and so we're excited to have you here. So
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's gonna be awesome. I don't know how much we can get into your story. You have your own amazing story, but we love just having real conversations and bringing content that's valuable to folks. So now you had mentioned something when we were emailing back and forth. You talked about coaching being the second fastest growing industry after tech. Is that right? What, I'd never heard that before. What's sparking that? What's going on out there? Right?
Yeah, that's actually very true, and it's been very obvious in the past years. And there are, of course, many speculations why is that might be. But for me, there are 3 things that I see in my practice that confirms the reasons why this is happening. One being that more than ever we are isolated. We're more isolated, the human interaction is not there, and people feel the need to talk. People feel the need to process their thought, to connect, and that's not that available anymore. How many times do we go and we just have a conversation with a friend, and at the end we feel like it's so better, I feel so much better, thank you very much, and the friend didn't do anything, just listen to us. So that's not that present anymore. So that's one big factor.
That's Aaron Alba right there. You just
for
described.
you. Yeah,
he will call up 9 people and ask them the same thing just to hear somebody's voice, just so he's
true.
not alone. And you know it when he calls you too, because it's you wonder, am I 7th on the list? Sometimes I'm number 1. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes this guy will call multiple people back to back, and he'll put you on hold because the first guy he really wanted to talk to just beeped in, and he's like, "Oh, can I call you back?"
I'm all about conclusive data. So the more people I talk to, the better answers I get. So
that's why I don't feel guilty not answering his phone call, because I know I'm just number one on a list of like 100 that he's hitting up at the moment.
MySpace top 5. You're like 18, so.
Yeah. Loneliness. Is there more to it than that?
Oh, yes, definitely. The other thing is that I think we're more triggered than ever, like with our dissatisfaction of the status quo.
Oh.
Yeah, and that I think comes a lot from all the opportunities that we have to compare ourselves. No?
Yeah.
Like, it's not just people around us. It's social media. It's internet. It's everywhere where you can see, you go on LinkedIn and you can find 1,000 examples of people at your age with your background that look, not necessarily they are, but they look more successful than you. So then there is that dissatisfaction that spark like, hey, I'm not happy. I want to do something about it.
Right.
And that's when, at times, people find help.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess more and more companies are embracing the idea of personal development, developing their employees, and I guess recognizing they can't be all things to their entire, especially if you're small business, right? You want to help develop your employees, but you need help and support to do that potentially. I don't know, but I mean that's interesting. You had a business coach?
I am currently in a business incubator type program, and we should actually have my technical business coach as a guest and an episode soon. So, but I've been kind of going through that ringer of, like you talked about, like perception of successful, or like what is being successful, redefining success. And so like talking through those things, and then putting all that through the lens of like personal passion and personal fulfillment. Because someone could just like want to open a car wash, right? And that could be like their thing. Like they could be like, them and their dad wanted to open a car wash one day. Or it could have, you know what I mean? It could be example after example after example. And the more and more I'm in this business class that I've been a part of, I've just learned so much. There's so much depth. And it's a lot more simple than we make it out to be, than the LinkedIn posts that all have 1,000 hashtags and what we think success looks like. It's not like that. So no, you're hitting the nail on the head. That's really amazing.
All right, I know you got a bunch of great stories, so I want to hear those. And feel free, if you think of a story, throw it out there as we're talking. But you had said something early on when we initially started talking about helping leaders and individuals overcome their fears, and I wrestle with that because I think for me, I couldn't determine whether it was a fear or just a deep hatred of asking people for money. And as a nonprofit leader, like I don't want to fundraise. I hate doing it. I want to solve problems, but I can't solve the problems without fundraising, and it's frustrating me. But not everybody works. Most people don't work for a nonprofit. What are some of the common fears you see keeping people from success?
Yeah, I see 3 very common. First, not necessarily in the order of importance, all of them are fears. First is the fear of looking vulnerable as a leader. And I think that really gets in the way of their success, because acting like they have it all together, it repels their team from them, if I can say. Like they don't look approachable. And if they are not approachable, they cannot lead their team at the capacity that they can. But leaders who understand that being vulnerable, it's actually a quality. Being vulnerable and saying, hey, I'm a human too, but let's do this together. Let's figure it out together. Those are the leaders that do not get in the way of their success by the lack of being vulnerable.
That's good.
Yeah, the other one that I see very common, which is kind of related, it's the imposter syndrome.
Okay.
That's
They're
huge
so
right now.
afraid. Some are stuck in taking some actions because of the fear of being discovered. Like, finally, this would be the action that would reveal I'm an imposter. It will reveal I'm a fraud. And again, that keeps them from taking the steps, that just keeps them stuck. And at the same time, again, the way how people relate with them can be affected. So those are the top two. But the other one, very common, is the fear that they might not deliver on the mission that they invited their team to join them.
Wow.
And how that gets in the way, in how I see that getting in the way, is that they put their pressure on themselves only. Like they are the only ones responsible to bring the mission at the end, where it's not like that. If they would release that fear, they would invite the people that join them in the mission to join them in fulfilling the mission. Come up, let's all of us do our best. Let's show up in the best way, being led by the mission that we have. And we have chances to make this work. But if they're trying to figure out all by themselves, because they need to figure it out, then that gets in their way. And I think every action that it's led by fear or inaction, it's somehow limiting.
Is there like a pill you can take for this? Like, because like I'm looking for
authenticity pill.
Yeah, no, I'm like, can I go to
pill?
Walgreens and get something over the counter that would help me overcome imposter syndrome and not
Red Bull.
Yeah, Red Bull. Yeah, like I wish there was a quick fix or so. We can identify with all three of those. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I personally can. I had a buddy that started at a tech company that he didn't think he deserved to get this position and higher salary than he's ever been paid. And his first like desk job, right? But it's opening up so many doors, like financially.
Yeah.
And I remember the first day he started, I had a funny conversation with him. His text messages were all really big words. I don't know if that makes sense. Like we text like shorthand, like BRB, but all of his words he was using were huge words. And I remember I texted him back and I said, "Hey man, why are you texting like this?" And he was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Are you trying to use every big word you've ever heard in the dictionary? Like, I'm just asking you what you ate for lunch. I'm just asking how you're doing." And he was like, "Honestly, man, I don't feel like I deserve to be where I am, and I'm just trying to prove to everyone else around me that I have a spot at the table."
Yeah.
And I remember I texted him back, and I was like, "Let's just talk to each other normally, and let's do that with all your coworkers today." And since then, he's skyrocketed. Like you're talking about, like he's talking about getting promoted, and like people are like, "Who is this guy? Like this guy's taking over like his department just because he's so good at what he does." So everything you were saying, there's like stories popping into my head, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like you've really cracked the code at this." So yeah.
So we know that as leaders, we need to coach our people well, right? And then that's a key ingredient to success, so that we're not on the mission alone. We don't feel like it's all on our shoulders. We need to empower, equip, coach. But there's a lot of ideas out there on how to do that. From your experience, what are the tools that we need to be using to coach and lead people well? What are some of the things that they might even be obvious things, but you're like, hey, you need to lean in on this. You need to do these things, and they make a big difference in the impact a team can make.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there are tools there, and exactly as you said, they don't need to be very complicated.
Right.
They are there right in front of us.
Yeah.
And the first tool that I have in mind, and I talk with leaders all the time, is use your one-on-ones to connect with your people.
Yeah, that's good.
Because what I hear, most of the leaders I know, they use their one-on-one as a project update.
Yeah.
And they might insert at the end or at the beginning some wisdom nuggets, some inspirational question that it's timed to 5 minutes, because then we need to get to the real stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not about connecting. It's like checking the box. Okay, I connected with you, but let's get to the real stuff, which is project. How is that project? How are we growing? But that 101, that half an hour, if it is to use to show interest in your people, Ask them, be curious, ask them about their family, ask them what they did in the weekend, ask them what are their aspirations, what's next in their life, what gets them stuck, what gets them excited, and use that half an hour just for them. It's been proven again and again. No, and we hear all this buzz that when you invest in your team, you get back so much. So that half an hour, don't spoil it with project updates.
Yeah.
So that's the first tool that it's totally in your face.
So when you think of that, like what, how often one-on-ones, is that you recommend like weekly, every other week, or it's a very J question, but I'm a to-do list kind of guy, and I'm like the details. Give me the breakdown of how much time I need to spend in the personal versus.
Yeah. I would go with quality versus quantity.
Yeah.
And then if you can spend only 15 minutes a week to dedicate it to be fully present with one of your employees, then do 15 minutes. Typically, I see half an hour a week. But you can break it down for whatever works for you. But those 15 minutes, if they are 100% dedicated to your people, they will make miracles in your team, I promise.
I'll give you 15, Aaron, 15 minutes.
I'll take an hour.
This month, no, bro, you got 15 minutes.
No, but I remember this, because this is applicable in a lot of different areas, but it's not just business, right? It's mentorship, and that's something that we really pride ourselves in. One of the top mentorship programs in the state, and so that's all centered around one-on-one. And I remember I first moved to Austin, and I was looking for a church. That's something I really value, right? And I remember I left the church the first Sunday I went years ago. Was walking into community college because, I'm a baller on a budget. And so I walked in. I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize, and it was the pastor of the church. And he was like, "Hey, I just wanted to take 15 minutes of your time. Did you want to get coffee this week?" And I was like, 15 minutes? Can I take an hour? He's like, "You can have 2 hours if you want." And it was like getting plucked out of like the crowd and saying like, "Hey, I just want to give you time." And through that hour, we got coffee at La Madeleine, and I was challenged. We laughed, like pretty sure, like he asked me my life story. And after that, like I was loyal to a fault. You know what I mean? I still go to this guy's house. That was like 7 years ago. I still call him when my car breaks down. And so it's a very human thing, right? Yeah. It's just saying, "Hey, I see you." Especially right now, the isolation piece you're talking about. I have a great relationship with my current manager at work. And it's because every time we get on a call with each other, we talk about fantasy football. We just talk about like, "Hey, how did your players do? How many points do they score? What is your favorite prediction for this coming season?" And then it usually turns into, there's not like a limit on it. It's just like we need to get to work. Yeah. And so when you have relationships like that, I think it makes it a lot easier to, like you said, have results and produce results.
Exactly.
So is there like a simplified structure for the novice coach? It's like we know we need to spend time with people and we want to take an interest in who they are outside of work. But then how do you actually coach? Is there like a coaching framework, that the dummies version?
That's a great question, Joe.
Aaron needs the dummies version.
I need the dummy version.
Again, 3 questions.
3 questions.
Yeah, I see.
You can
3.
remember this.
Yeah.
Okay, write this
So
down.
what is that you want to accomplish? What are you working on? What's the goal? That's the question. 1.
Or
the other one.
Okay. What are you working on?
What are you working on?
Okay.
Yeah. And it comes in different shapes.
That's a
forms.
trick question. Like, that's not what I assigned you to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're fired, bro.
Yeah, you're out of here.
No,
Please don't fire me, Joe.
No. Second one is, what is important about that to you? And you connect them to their motivation.
Okay.
The goal, motivation. And third one, what's one step that you can do to get you closer? And then follow up. Next time you have those 15 minutes, follow up. How did you do? How did that action work out for you? So that's one. And the other one, if you want to go deeper, there is a book that I recommend to all leaders that want to become better coaches. It's called The Coaching Habit.
Okay.
And I don't know the author.
Hey, that's all right. We're
Wisdom
Googling
is the author.
Amazon.
I listened to him yesterday. Michael something,
Habit.
but I don't know the rest. But yes, The Coaching Habit. You will find it. And it's all centered about 7 main questions. 7 questions that you can coach anyone. And it addresses most of the questions that someone might have about coaching. And you can go deeper into that. And if you're not a reader, they have a wonderful tool online where you can just log in and you can see these 7 questions put into action. How he's coaching someone through that.
Yeah.
And if you just do that, I think you're going to become the best manager that they ever worked with, because there are just a few managers that would do that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, what really stuck out to me on that part was the follow-up, right? Because I think there's so many times where, like, if you're relational and you're personable, 1 and 2 can be a little easier, right? They can be like, hey, like, what are you up to this week? Hey, what are you working on? Like, hey, why is that important to you? And it's that third piece, that accountability piece, that reformation piece, that excellence piece, where it's like, hey, I'm not just going to talk to you about it, and then next week we're going to talk about something else. Next week I'm going to ask you, hey, I remember you said that you were, like, building something with your dad. How did it go well? You want to send me a picture of it? And I now that you're saying that, like, you're breaking it down, like pulling out, like, the metadata of it, something similar we do with, like, the Purpose Pro podcast and Purpose Pro with our students and mentees, is like you're breaking it down level by level. And when you just follow up and just say, hey, how did that go? Like that, like, I'm remembering so many instances where my managers have done that. I'm like, wow, that I never realized how big that was, the follow up.
Yeah. Because the growth is in the action.
Yeah.
And if they took the action, you help them grow.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yep. Well, so you're seeing a whole bunch of different leaders in a lot of different spheres. Is there a particular group or type of individual that you often come across and you're like, and these people really need a business coach? I feel like I see that all the time.
That's me.
I
need a business
like,
coach.
Oh, you need a coach, man. And I don't know if since this is a growing industry, what prevents people from, who needs a coach? How do people get coaches? Or maybe people just think, especially if you run a small business, I can't afford a coach.
Yeah.
I don't know what people think, but, like, who needs a coach?
I would say that nobody needs a coach.
Really?
No.
Oh, wow.
But
what I
some
think
money
it's
right there.
Yeah.
So you save the money.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that the most important question is, who wants a coach? And people that want to grow, they are taking that path. They are looking for someone to join them in this growing journey. It's like when you go to the gym, you don't need a personal trainer to join the gym, but if you want really growth, if you want to reach your fitness goals faster, then it is a good idea to hire a trainer. How many people you've heard that said, I went to the gym just because I had to meet with my coach or my trainer?
Yeah.
That's
you
that's
have
a good
that
analogy.
accountability, that someone that walks alongside you to make sure that you are reaching your goals and you don't get in your way.
You're
Yeah.
really quotable. Did you know that? Because you were like, you don't need one. And I was like, why did you come on the podcast? But I remember years ago, before I was ever a creative director for this podcast or even knew anything about podcasts, I was sitting down with Joe and I was like 18. And I was like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to do this. And then 6 months later, he's like, what have you done with that? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I work at a coffee shop. And I remember I was just like going on and on about my ideas. And Joe, one time, he just told me to stop talking. And he said, stop lying to yourself. Because, like, if you don't have the drive to do any of those, 6 months from now, we're going to keep having the same conversation. So, like, get real with yourself. And he's like, when you have that desire, come back to me and we can really talk about it. And I will honestly say we never had that conversation for years, up until the point where we really started investing in this like the content here and the ideas behind this, because there was very few things that like got me excited. So when you're talking about like, oh, I have to go to the gym, no, it's like I really don't want to do that today, but I'm kind of excited to see my personal trainer. Like now that you're wording it like that, it reminds me a lot of conversations I've had that have pushed me to be better than I ever thought possible. So that's awesome.
Okay. So, all right. Let's like give us some tools here. Like for those that if nobody needs a coach, but we should want a coach. How do we coach ourselves? Like what are some habits that we need to form or whatever, that you could say to people listening out there, hey, these are the things that you should be doing to coach yourself well, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. one thing that I found very useful, and I can talk of how I coach myself,
Okay. All right.
is first capturing my thoughts.
Okay.
Being aware that they happen and try not to engage with them, because we don't need to engage with every single thought that comes to our mind.
Yep.
At times we just need to honor it. It's part of us, because the more we engage, the more thinking we create.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's first.
Would that include things like
Mhm.
just like scheduling time to creatively think about a problem or an issue, like creating space to think in general versus just doing and going from the next meeting or activity or thing to the next. Like I find myself sometimes just moving so fast, I don't even have time to honor my own thoughts or
Yeah.
think. I
Mhm.
just got to
Mhm.
get things done,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, the part with capturing the thoughts that I mentioned earlier, it's more the thoughts that are junk, that we don't even need to pay attention to them.
Mm-hmm.
That just come and go, unhelpful thoughts that, the imposter syndrome, like, oh my gosh, I'm an imposter, they will figure it out. Those are thoughts that we don't need to engage too much into that, because the more we think about it, the more we're going to make it bigger, and we're masters at scaring ourselves. No,
Yeah.
that's what fear is. But once you capture some thoughts, if you identify some thoughts that are kind of helpful, like kind of feels like we need to engage in some way, there are 3 questions that you can question a thought that I do it all the time. It's first, is it true?
Okay.
And then if it's true, then what do you do about it? If there is an action that you can identify as a result of that thing being true, then take the action. Make steps to take the action. Do something about it. And if it's not an action that you can identify, then try to replace it with something else.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something that you did in the past and you cannot go back in time to redo it, but maybe there is something, hey, given the past, that was the best I could do at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're triggered by that thought again, replace it with this thought. Given that time, that's the best I could do. Okay? But if there is an action, which is important, take the action. The second question is it helpful? Like, okay, it's true, it happened. But is it helpful? If it's helpful, then very likely there is an action that you can take.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if there is not an action, replace it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third question, is it kind? And most of the time towards us, like, oh, I acted in the way that I'm not proud. I don't like, and then we go again and again and again in that place. It's not helpful, not kind, probably true. But is there anything we can do? Is there an apology that we can take? Like we can do as a result of that? And if not, what's a better word? What's a better thought that can serve us a little bit better? So that's a self-coaching that it's helpful in doing again and again with thoughts that just come.
That was crazy, Joe.
Well,
that was awesome.
I was kind of thinking of who's the late night show guy that does the mean tweets?
Oh, Jimmy Fallon.
Is that Fallon
I think
or
Jimmy Kimmel?
Kimmel? It's Kimmel. Mean tweets.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking how unhelpful that probably
Yes,
is. So this
yes,
is very opposite
yes. The
of
complete
everything,
opposite of that.
everything Lucia's talking about here. But I was thinking about, like, anytime we get criticized as leaders, and it could be something we read on social media or something we hear somebody say, I think it does trigger things like the imposter syndrome, where we start to second guess, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about or whatever. And, maybe I'm not cut out for this. And it's like a snowballs a lot of negative self-talk that doesn't actually get us anywhere. And,
I mean, firsthand, not to cut you off, as you're talking from the beginning of this episode to up to this moment, like I'm thinking about, like, oh, I'm stepping behind the camera, in front of the camera. I really care about this podcast, so I've spent hours helping build it. Like, you're talking about imposter syndrome, success, talking about honoring your thoughts, and I'm thinking, like, I want to share a cool story, I want to do this, and somewhere in the midst of that, like, honoring your thoughts, you know what I mean, and like sitting with, like, okay, like, wow, like
Mhm.
this is really so much more than just a position. Like we talked about, like leadership earlier. Like sometimes we can get caught up, or leaders can get caught up in the title. They can get caught up in like, oh, I have to get results or data or this, but they have to realize like they're people first, like they're human first, like they're people that are following them aren't just employees, they're people first.
Mhm.
And so I don't know, like you're kind of boiling it down to like slow down, breathe, and then like being kind to yourself. Like the whole time you're talking, I was like, I'm not as smart as this person. I was like, what the heck? Like I could just take notes over this, and that's okay. You know what I mean? To just sit here and just listen and just kind of sit in like that wisdom. So
Yeah. What any other tools that you think of that people should use or can use to coach, lead themselves well?
Yeah, first I want to add
Yeah.
something. So this tool that I mentioned, it's from a book. It's called Soundtrack, but by Jon Acuff,
cool.
and that like this is inspired from there. So if you
Yeah.
want to get deeper, like that's a wonderful book
Hey,
to
I'm
read.
ready for it. Ready
Yeah.
for me to call you when I.
Aaron doesn't read.
Okay, no.
Audiobook.
Other
Yeah.
other tools. Yeah. So oftentimes we get into this I don't know land.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do about that. What do I do? And then some ways that we can get ourselves from there is just to ask us some questions like, what would a wise person do? And what happens in that in that time? Like you take from like you leave this level where you're in the problem and you start looking at it from the top and you start looking at it differently. It's like when you hear a friend's problem
Mm-hmm.
and we know their solution because we look at the problem from here.
Mm-hmm.
But when they are inside, they cannot see.
Yep.
They cannot see the solution. So that is one quick question that you can ask yourself
Mm-hmm.
when you get stuck.
Bird's eye view wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah.
What you have any like? What's your favorite coaching win? Some things that you've seen, or seen people overcome or push through and accomplish as you've been, guiding people.
Yeah. So see, there is not like one that is my favorite.
Oh, you don't
per
have everybody's
se.
got a favorite. Okay, one that's in the top 10. 5.
One that's in
Three.
but what I want to add about the stories is what I love is what that does to the person.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone experiences differently.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I have a client and she was struggling. When we met, she was struggling to get out of bed. She was totally demotivated. Not depressed per se, but totally demotivated. And she said, I just need to take one step. And then we work. What does that one step look for you? And she said, just get on the beach. She lives on the beach. And she said, just get 1 minute. Okay, let's do 1 minute. How can I support you? Can I send you a picture of that walk? I said, yes, please. Next day she did it. And then she sent me a picture after 2 minutes, after 3 minutes of walking. And now she's walking an hour a day. And it seems like from afar, it seems like not a big deal, like a person started walking. But what is important, what did that do to her?
Yeah.
Now it's been like 3 months that she's walking. And now she's starting to get in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's starting to go out again, put makeup on her. And those are stories. So my favorite,
Mm-hmm.
it's what's favorite, that is just the change that you see, what that does
Yeah.
to a person, not necessarily the person. But I do have a favorite.
Okay.
That
Okay,
happened
okay.
20 years ago in
Okay.
my first leadership position. I had this person who was working in the factory, but I could see that she's a gem. She was absolutely amazing. Every time at the end of the day when I would ask, hey, how is it going? What was how many bags did you do? We did in a factory. We worked in a bags manufacturing company. And she would prepare to me this elaborate reports with everything that happened, everything that was good, bad, and all that. And I felt like you belong somewhere else. So what I did, I gave her the option to just do like an internship 1 month in the office.
Wow.
And in this time, all I did was just coach her.
Mm-hmm.
All I did was just to support her, help her believe in herself, help her to see the gem that what she's capable of.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, long story short, 15 years later, now she has her own team. Now it was 5 years later that she became a leader of herself, and she was running a team of 20 people in a company.
Wow.
And she said she never believed that she's capable. But just having someone speak truth, something that we can do in our one-on-ones, just see what we see in somebody can make a difference, because sometimes we can be the only person that does that to another person.
That's good. That's yeah.
You hit the nail on the head.
Well said. Well said. You know, I was thinking, I don't know what I would have told the lady who lived by the beach. I think I would have told her to move. Like, but I would sleep all day too if I lived by the beach.
Yeah.
So maybe that was problem number one. But get out of bed. That was good advice too. Take one step. You know, move in a direction. And I think that's it. You know, I think we all have, you know, ambition to move forward with our initiatives, with our missions, and there's always going to be something that trips us up, gets us stuck. And what I heard you really saying is that the people who should want to coach are the people who want to overcome what's getting them stuck, you know? And a lot of people say they want to do it, but they're not taking, their actions imply that they don't, right? And I think it's a very simple move to invite someone like yourself into their life and say, hey, let's have a conversation. And so we want everybody listening to be able to connect with Lucia and do so primarily on LinkedIn. I think is the number one way to get a hold of you. So we'll put that link in the show notes and all that kind of good stuff. So people just reach out to you, say, hey, I heard you on this podcast, and you know, talk. Like, you're super approachable.
You really are.
Have conversations with anyone at any point. Very accessible. You reply very fast to people who reach out to you. So I definitely would encourage people to do that. And then, you know, around this whole coaching thing, obviously, if you're at a place where you're like, I need something to a tool of sorts to invest in my people better and get to know them faster. Well, that's the Purpose Project, and that's exactly what we do. So if you're at a place where you're thinking about how I can leverage a tool that would really help me connect with people fast that I lead, then reach out to us. Go to purposepro.org and sign up for one of our adult workshops. They're 1 hour. We'll show you exactly what others will experience by walking you through things like your success factors, your strengths, the themes in your unique design, all kinds of cool stuff that is aimed at really helping people understand themselves better, you as a leader understanding them better, and being able to help them go further faster. And so that's one way a lot of leaders are using our tool. But again, Lucia, thank you so much for coming on and talking and sharing and telling us, get a lot of good nuggets here, some great stories, and we want to encourage people to follow up and connect with you. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right, Aaron, you got through your first podcast without Zach holding your hand. How do you feel? Are you okay?
He's still holding my hand in my heart.
In your heart? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, I'm just like sitting in all the wisdom that you've shared, because like I'm genuinely super encouraged and just like excited for like the next episode, just because it's like stepping out of that imposter feeling and stepping into, like you said, unearthing that gem that each of us has in us. So no, I just thank you so much for being a part of the podcast.
Yeah.
It's been fun. My pleasure.
All right. Well, the genius of the content in season 5 is only just beginning. And so stay tuned next week as we dive into more great topics and great conversations. We'll see you then.
Peace.
Peace.